In the last video, I'm going to show you how I'm going to create the body simply out of individual surfaces, which I'm going to trim against each other. So I have, for example, here my different layouts. So I'm going to start, for example, with a CV curve, making use of my grid. So this is, for example, the back. Maybe this one should be the front. And I'm just only roughly positioning the CVs. I'm not necessarily too picky right now because I don't even know how this is going to work. So as you see, I'm just adjusting them. And I need something for the side. So click, click, and click. You see, I overbuild or overshoot, so make really big surfaces. And then this one actually move a little bit this way. Okay, good. So that's nice. So now I have to make sure that everything is also here, for example, positioned correctly. So you see I'm moving those away. Intersection 2. Control Alt, click on this curve, position it. Control Alt, position it on the curve. Control Alt, position it on the curve. Okay, good. Those two, copy and paste. Information we know I have to bring it over. So positive, and here minus. Wait, this is interesting. Okay, hold on. I have to check this one. Where is the pivot point? There. This one should be minus. Okay, let's move this one down. Now that is interesting. What's 0? Oh, 0 is where I properly created it. Okay, good that I can show you this one. So what I'm simply doing from the center point, I'm just creating a new part there, and then this one I'm going to move along the y-axis, maybe to there. This is curve 34, so I'm going to select 32 and delete it. And then this one I can copy and paste, move it over, and then actually here with a minus I flip the direction. It also means this one might be outdated, so let's move this one to there. Alt click, snap, copy and paste, Alt click, and then let's change the rotation. Okay, looks good. So very simple, clean, easy to digest surfaces I want. So I need easy and clean curves. Then actually I can go back to my monorail. One generation, one profile, or rail. So this profile along this rail. Next, this profile along this rail. Next, this profile along this rail. Next, and this profile along this rail. Next, and we're done. Now let's take a look how the stuff looks. So there you see actually the kind of like they're starting to define a boundary. So one thing I really would like to stress out, if you want to do something like this, it is really important that from the beginning, for example, all your curves or surfaces hopefully try to work exactly the same way. So lengthwise they all have to be somewhat similar. So for example, you see at the bottom, they all start at the same position. So I'm going to create maybe from here one more line. So a CV tool, maybe from there to there to, yeah, actually let's go to there. And then let's go to here. No, actually, that's not what I wanted. There, click, nope, new curve, click, click, click. Again, making use of my grid. And then I'm going to move this one complete object-wise out of the box to there. Try to, nope, move this one up a little bit, and then this curve I move somewhere else, Control Alt and snap onto the center. Okay, and then another rail, that's for the top. So rail, profile rail, there's my surface. Great. So what I'm going to do now first is actually I am going to cut or intersect basically those surfaces with this surface. Going to trim, and then you discard. So you see I can press spacebar, it remembers the alt setting. There. So you know everything I cut away, and I just end up with the inside surface. So now actually I can go to intersect and say you, spacebar, with you and you. And then this surface intersect with you and you. Okay, and I can go back to trim, spacebar. It's like building a paper model. Well, what's really important, the trim basically works like a knife that completely cuts from one side of a page to the other side of the page. Or when you make a circle, it is kind of like a closed shape. You can't, with a scissor, like cut into a page and kind of like move the two sides where you cut into. You have to cut completely through, which means why I, for example, trimmed the vertical faces with the top one first, because then all those vertical faces had exactly the same height like they have at the bottom, so their edges lined up, and then I was able to do the next trims. Okay, so let's see what we can do in terms of being creative. Nice thing, same thing applies here. And of course, be careful what you click. I always tend to click on rotate when actually I want to click on move. So there, you see, this is so beautiful. Can just be nice and creative. Of course, don't overshoot. You need to do this one. Here, this is actually a good example to show. Here it can't work because the intersection calculation works, but the surfaces don't really cut completely through. They cut in the top and the bottom, so this command cannot work. It has, like a knife, cut completely through your stuff. Think about this like chocolate fudge. You don't cut into it, you cut through it to slice it. And that's really all you need to keep in mind. So maybe here, maybe this one I want to pull down. I guess I can't do it too deep. Okay. maybe make it a little bit more like this. See, this is really nice. Okay, so let's take a look at how we can tackle the problem of those hard edges and turn them into nice and soft rounded corners. And maybe here let's try to see what we can do with the round tool. The round tool, in contrast to the surface fillet, provides transitions between surfaces. However, the main difference is here you kind of work more on edges. Here you work more between two surfaces, or kind of like sets of opposite surfaces. So you can click on an edge and, for example, type in a radius 0.5 or 1. You see there's this radius, there's a blue marker where you can position the radius. You can also drag it, changes the radius 0.5. Click another edge. You see there's a triangle. I'm going to explain those meanings just in a minute. So you see I just click all those parts and they all maintained the same initially created radius. When I click build, the software is creating then the fillets for me. Now let's take a look at what this icon actually means. It's a triangle with like a Y inside. You see it represents the shape of the corner and the amount of surfaces. So this, for example, is a hexagon. It has 6 surfaces. Nice rounded edges, but a little bit more complex. Triangle, just really brute triangle, sharp corners, visually in my opinion not very pleasing. So this one, for example, looks actually nicer, but it is also more complex. So what else can we do with the round tool? Well, the nice thing is we can, for example, change the radius. So click on each edge on the radius and build. And now you see the vertical radii are the same and the top one got changed. But there's one problem. The thing is, if we click build and leave and go to here, I'm going to save and I'm going to select this CV. You see that this CV is associated to a curve that creates something, and then all these lines are magenta because that's of the trimming. If I move this one up or down, you have to be careful. See, there are some dotted lines, and if you look closely, you see our fillet actually didn't really, sometimes. But it is a tricky one. So let me open the last document. So stage 5, wire, where is it? There, open. Yes. So what we are going to do now instead of working on this model, I'm actually going to, just for the sake of this demonstration, revert all the values, and then I select my surfaces, copy and paste, assign them onto a different layer, and actually those layers by accident I created onto the default layer. So make really sure that the edges are blue, which means that's really a copy without any design history. Because the nice thing I can do now, I copy and paste, I make myself some models. This is where, for example, I think computer modeling comes in really very handy. It's kind of like very quickly developing ideas. So you skip certain steps, or you don't skip, I mean, you're more trying to do what's appropriate for what you want to do. So I made myself many copies. They don't have any design history anymore. I lose that interactive ability, but maybe here I'm going to make quickly variations and studies with the edge rounding, because this is something I can do so fast. I can't really do just if I only have one model, because I only can see it once. And then if, for example, here I find something I like, I could still go back to my other model where I still have all the edges being interactive and then apply those values to there. So for example, here, as you can see, I changed the radii, maybe a little bit too big. That stuff doesn't really work. The software is getting a little bit cranky. There, and here it also intersects, so 0.7 maybe, and 0.7 build there. Okay, still not really ideal, so 0.5, 0.3 build. Yeah, 0.4. So, that's a little bit cleaner. So, yeah, and then you can continue to play with it. So, the interactive design history is something you can make use of, but sometimes you simply also have to say goodbye to it. And sometimes it's also a good thing to do, kind of like here, because all I'm trying to focus on is making quickly variations, and then I have copies which I can compare, make a decision, and then actually I could go back, for example, to my other other layer where I have my masterpiece, and then apply those to there. So let's try to finish this one by adding, for example, an opening in the top area. So I can, for example, do this one with a circle, 360 degrees, 4 segments, or 2 segments, maybe degree 5. I keep it actually at 4 because I would like to show you something. One span, go, and then I go to the top somewhere, click with Alt onto the grid, and the thing has to be scaled down. There it is. And then I'm actually moving this one into my design. Let's move it up. So I understand that somewhere later at one point I need actually a transition. So this circle right now might be a little bit too big. If you need to have a very specific radius and you don't have enough flash to make the fillets, either you have to make them smaller or the top of the bottle has to adjust to get bigger. And I'm going to copy and paste this one down, move it inside, go for a moment to wireframe, and then, for example, go into the skin. So the skin has a chain select. Instead of segment to segment, I go chain. So this whole chain, so those are 4 individual arcs. Again, like Alias really likes to work with patches, not closed surfaces. This works really well. The chain actually selects all the chains of kind of like a shape that, technically speaking, looks closed. Go to here and next. Let's take a look. There you see now we have a cylinder that's made out of actually 4 different parts. So if I click it, it's actually 4 picked surfaces. but it's a very clean surface, as you can see, degree 5 single span, so it's not very complicated. So we go to intersect. So for example, those 4 slices, spacebar, intersect with this top surface. Now it creates the intersection curve on both surfaces because I have this one set to both. And then I can go to trim. Click, for example, in here and say discard. And then it's going to be easier to click on the outside and say keep. And there you see it actually removed the interior space. Okay, great. The really nice thing again about the design history, if I click those arcs, now because those are segments, I have to make sure I select really all 4 arcs at the same time. And if I move them, maybe along the x-axis, see everything follows it. So the arcs move, that means the skin command is updated. Whoops, wrong one. And then of course also all the trim commands are updated. So this is really nice. Now let's take a look at the fillet. I still have all those settings. Maybe for the moment I set this one to something like this. Okay, and let's click this one. You see this one is magenta. You see when I click this one and this one, they still maintain actually the same color. And when I click this surface, you see this one is yellow. So there you actually see that the surface fillet tool basically works between 2, let's say 2 units or groups, how you want, or sets. The surfaces for my loft or the skin command for the cylinder is one set, and the yellow one is another object. So this is actually a nice feature of Alias, where you can create the fillet by actually working with more than 2 surfaces at once. So maybe 4. Let's see how this one looks. It's pretty big, so we might have to scale it down a little bit. So there, for example, we have a really simple G1 circular or tangent. What about curvature? Yeah, something doesn't work up there. So I have to be careful with always what's saying up there. But for something like here, maybe tangent 1, see if it pushes it down more. I guess there was something with the radius that didn't really work. Okay, so build, and even here now, if I go and say select curves, all those and all those, and move this, hopefully everything should work correctly, but there again you see it's a little bit tricky sometimes. So this again reinforces what I showed just in the previous demo. Everything with fillets, etc., try to imagine that those are details you will try to build later on to really make rough models with sharp edges, and then later maybe then we start at the end to finish the model with those details, because there you were able to see that actually there were some problems. Just to make yourself life a little bit easier. So there's a very specific process in computer modeling. You have many problems, you just break them down into smaller, easier to digest units, and then step by step you start simple and then later end complex and perfect.